Hello there, and welcome back to the channel. So, I remember when Coco came out, and there was all this buzz about how it was the definitive movie about Dia de los Muertos, the Mexican holiday to remember your deceased loved ones. And at the time, I was like, hey guys, you know they already made this movie, right? Like, 3 years before? I mean, you got a music-loving main character ostracized by their family for playing the guitar. They travel through the land of the dead. You got peculiar twin ancestors for some reason. And the main message is staying true to yourself. Now, obviously, the details of the journeys are very different, but when it comes to which movie handles Dia de los Muertos better, I think The Book of Life sweeps. This movie has been way too slept on. Now, it's not to say Coco is a terrible movie or anything. If you love it, more power to you. Though you probably shouldn't watch this video cause it'll likely trigger you. It's been a long time and I finally want to get it out of my chest as to why I think The Book of Life is a better movie. In this review, I'll specifically be looking at the themes, characters, and the world building. The animation in both movies are amazing, so I'm not going to compare that here. I also think both films represent the actual holiday pretty well, so, it's not like one completely decimates the reputation of Mexican culture. With that out of the way, let's begin. The central theme in both stories is staying true to yourself. This is propelled by the main character's love of music, but they must overcome family barriers to their passions. Great theme. So, why do I think The Book of Life handles it better? In that movie, Manolo is constantly belittled for his passions. You see this early on as he doesn't get any recognition when he saves the general and the town. He's always facing consequences for his choices. When he wants to choose music over bullfighting, his father scolds him. When he decides not to kill the bull, the entire town hates him. Even his family outcasts him. When he chooses his love for Maria, he is literally killed, needs to go on this long journey, and has to fight a giant magical bull. Fighting for who you are takes a lot of time and pressure. It's not easy to be yourself, but doing so makes you a better person. Defeating the final bosses felt satisfying because we've seen how much work Manolo has done towards his dreams. This is paired nicely with Joaquin's character. He has always had it very easy in life. He's continuously given instant recognition. The town loves him for his heroics, even though his strength and courage only come from a trinket. It's a hack, and it's that hack that leads to his downfall, because without it, he's a coward. He doesn't have true strength, and he's not the real hero in the story. Now, I'll talk about these characters later, but we can see how both Manolo and Joaquin's journeys go back to the original theme of being true to yourself. This is because Manolo's endurance and heart ultimately proves his strength, not just to his family, but to the audience. The problem with Coco is that the characters rarely have to deal with consequences. Now, this is a huge issue which I'll get into more specifics in the next section, but as it applies to the theme of the movie, Miguel doesn't really have to work that hard for his passions of music. Probably the only good example is when his grandma destroys his guitar in the beginning of the movie. That's a good scene. But Miguel never has to struggle to earn the acceptance of his family. In the afterlife, his ancestors accept him by learning Hector was murdered and never ran away. But what did Miguel do to earn that? He was told the secret through an exposition dump. Then, in the land of the living, his family accepts him because Coco remembers her father? That doesn't make sense. Even if the song brings back her memory, shouldn't Coco still have terrible memories of her father? Wouldn't she have continued that ban on music? She doesn't know he was murdered. Shouldn't any memory of her father disturb her?
I saw your papa. Remember? Papa? Please. If you forget him, he'll be gone. Forever.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to? What the hell does this have to do with anything? Tell me what's happening!
Again, Miguel himself never had to fight for his passions. With a bit of convincing and the magic of plot armor, his family kinda just accepts music at the end of the movie. So his arc doesn't feel that satisfying because he never had to work that hard to gain acceptance. Now, you might say, well, strumming that guitar brought Miguel to the afterlife. Isn't that a consequence? Well, not really. Why does Miguel want to go back to the land of the living? We see how terrible his family treated him. Seeing a world full of endless possibilities and no consequences should entice him. Miguel presumably just died, so his memory will remain with the family for at least a few more decades. I don't see why he'd want to go back when he can enjoy his passion of playing music here. The scene where Miguel and Hector are stuck in the cenote could be conceived as another consequence, and it's admittedly a good scene, because Miguel has these conflicting thoughts that maybe following his passions was a bad idea. Now, I could talk about how easily the dog saves him here, but this is where we get to my next big problem. The movie doesn't know what message it wants to send. The themes in Coco conflict because it is both about the importance of sticking with family and following your passions. While the Book of Life treats family as important, it was never the central focus, because ultimately Manolo placed more importance on being himself, and it was him proving himself that made his family accept him. His love for music and Maria ultimately made Manolo the hero of the story. What about Miguel's passion for music makes his family accept him? It's more about misinterpreting Hector's disappearance, not music itself. Why does Miguel care about his family at the end of the movie? I get why he loves Hector, but what has the rest of his living family done to make him care about them? Again, it's about the murder mystery. The acceptance from both sides only comes from an external plot point, not an internal drive from the characters. Lastly, I think the themes in the Book of Life better reflect Dia de los Muertos. The wager that starts the movie is between Xibalba, who represents humanity's evil, and La Muerte, who represents humanity's goodness. The light side and the dark side. In this wager to see who will win over Maria's heart, Xibalba gives his medal of everlasting life to Joaquin. The dark side is the quick and easy path, but ultimately it will consume you into nothingness. La Muerte doesn't give Manolo any powers, but she gives him her blessing. The light side is a very difficult path, but it's the righteous one, and ultimately the one that gives you life. Why is any of this important? Because this is directly tied to the characters' arcs. Both struggle with living under the shadow of their ancestors' legacies. So Manolo and Joaquin represent the right and wrong ways to follow in their footsteps. Legacy is an extremely important component of both this movie and Dia de los Muertos. The whole point of the holiday is remembering your ancestors, and if you leave a bad legacy, you'll be forgotten. At the end of the movie, La Muerte says,
"Anyone can die. These kids, they will have the courage to live."
This is a great line because by not embracing your passions and who you are, you're spiritually dead. By forging your own path the right way, you are living, and you will leave a better legacy for it. Now, Coco does a good job with a lot of the surface level stuff related to the holiday. All the iconography is there, and the songs like Remember Me are really good. But beyond that, Dia de los Muertos isn't super important to this story. Okay, obviously it's important to the plot, but I'm talking about the actual themes of the story. Legacy isn't handled that well here, because Hector's legacy wasn't his fault. So it's not like Miguel has to overpower the way his family operates. If Miguel employed Batman to uncover the secrets of his family's past using good old detective work, you'd get the same outcome. But the Batman isn't a Dia de los Muertos story. If you take the holiday out of the Book of Life, you don't have that movie. If in Coco Miguel went to Gotham instead of the afterlife to solve the murder mystery, I'm not sure much of the actual story changes. Well, okay, fine. It's not like Miguel's goal was to solve a murder mystery, but this leads to my next category. Now, Coco undisputably has better character moments. Pixar is the master of these, and you have some great scenes where characters show a lot of emotions and they're interacting very naturally. That might be my one big criticism of the Book of Life. It has good character moments, but they're often not long enough, or there will be a joke inserted that wasn't necessary. But here's the thing to remember. Good character moments doesn't equate to good characterization. What do I mean by this? Earlier I mentioned how Miguel facing little consequences detracts from the theme of fighting for your passions. But this is also a narrative problem. The character moments are great, but I ultimately don't connect with these characters very much. The most glaring issue is the reveal that De La Cruz wasn't Miguel's ancestor. I'm sorry, this completely derails the movie for me, because everyone's problems get solved with an easy solution. It wasn't Hector's fault for leaving his family, so he doesn't have to earn back anyone's trust. Miguel doesn't have to fight hard for his love of music. He just needs to tell his family that the ban on music was built on a lie. It's kind of like the Great Divide from The Last Airbender. Instead of everyone working to understand each other like in Encanto, we just have to defeat the final boss. And that's another thing. Miguel's living family don't do anything to regain Miguel's trust. People complain that Abuela's apology in Encanto was too short, but the entire emotional climax of that movie was her apology. In Coco, we don't even hear anyone say I'm sorry. I assume this is implied, but why does Miguel let all their abuse slide? Because his ancestors apologized?
This is a load of barnacles.
That's not enough for me to forgive them. The lack of consequences in this movie ultimately doesn't connect me with the characters beyond a surface level. Hector not leaving his family also causes other problems that just don't make sense. So obviously he and Imelda have seen each other in the afterlife. I get that at first everyone thought Hector died from eating some bad chorizo, but why do people in the afterlife forget he was on his way home? Sure, he had a skill issue, but he obviously wanted to see his family. I get that's not going to change anything in the land of the living, but that's a pretty important detail for those in the afterlife. Yeah, I guess it might be hard to convince them, but decades later they still don't believe him? After his numerous efforts to cross the bridge to see his daughter? Second off, when he finally does tell Imelda the truth, why in the hell is she still pissed? She's still like,
and so what if it's true? You leave me alone with a child to raise and I'm just supposed to forgive you?
What? Alright, yo, this is Copper 3.
bro, your entire reason for banning music is because you thought he left you. He was literally on his way back home before he got squad wiped by De La Cruz. So the solutions to everyone's problems are just exposing De La Cruz instead of actually working towards progress. Let's pair this with the Book of Life. Each of the main characters deal with consequences and they directly impact their arcs. Maria causes a pig outbreak because she loves animals, and it's because of this her father sends her away to quote unquote become a lady. This only makes her drive to become an independent woman stronger. Not only is this important to her personal arc, but it directly correlates both Manolo and Joaquin's arcs. Manolo never wanted to kill the bull, but his final decision is caused by Maria's presence. She also chooses him because he treats her with love and respect. For most of the runtime, Joaquin gets his way by cheating.
Plankton cheated.
The first consequence is that Maria doesn't want to be with him because he doesn't treat her with respect. Then later, when his medal is taken from him, he runs away from the fight because he doesn't have true strength. Now, he actually has a pretty good arc because both the influence of Manolo and his dead father ultimately gives him the drive to change. He saves Manolo's life and was willing to put his life on the line. The Book of Life also has final bosses to defeat, the Skull Beast and Chacal. On the surface, it may seem like these are on the same level as De La Cruz, but they're not, because they're meant to represent the journeys our main characters have gone on, and their growth is ultimately the reason why these villains are defeated. I can't really say the same for De La Cruz because ultimately exposing him was a pretty simple task. What if instead of De La Cruz being a twist villain, he actually was Miguel's ancestor? He'd still be a terrible guy because he'd have left his family for music. Miguel would be forced to reevaluate his choices and whether he's doing the same thing by following music. This can represent what happens when you let your passions take over your mind, the dark side. Hector can still be in the movie too. He wouldn't have to be directly tied to Miguel's ancestry, but he would represent what it's like when you pursue your passions the right way, the light side. Perhaps he wasn't as famous as De La Cruz, but he had a happy life because he made a positive difference in his daughter's life, showing us that the good we do for others is ultimately much better than fame and recognition. De la Cruz and Hector can be nice foils that help Miguel's decision making in the movie. I know I'm taking this right out of the Book of Life, but I genuinely think this rewrite would have been much more impactful for Coco. This still doesn't solve what happens with the living family though. That's what I'll discuss in the next section.
And if you can forgive, and if you can forgive, love can truly live.
So there's quite a few questions I have about Coco's world building. Some of this might seem very nitpicky, but it's pretty important to the overall story and its themes. Here's the most important question I have. How does Miguel go to the afterlife? He strums a guitar and that's how he's transported. Okay, what does strumming a guitar have to do with that? The only answer we're ever given is,
Dia de los Muertos is a night to give to the dead. You stole from the dead.
yeah, I'm sorry, that's a pretty weak explanation. Does this mean anytime you take something from a dead person, you're banished to the afterlife? Does this happen to grave robbers? Would Lara Croft be banished to the afterlife for tomb raiding? I mean, wouldn't she be transported to that realm at least once a game? And what about things like hand-me-downs? Are those possessions of the deceased? What about other things from loved ones? If Luke kept his father's lightsaber to remember him by, would he be banished to the afterlife? Seamus Gorman has a great video talking about this and his personal theory. I highly recommend you check out his video. Link will be in the description. Regardless, we shouldn't need a theory video to explain the most important plot element in the movie. Like Gorman mentions, a curse on the guitar would be a fine explanation for this, but here's how I would have rewritten it. So, because Miguel's grandma destroyed his guitar, he goes to De La Cruz's crypt to get the guitar. Perhaps the guitar is much higher up. Miguel is able to get it, but all of a sudden he loses his balance and falls back. Miguel hits his head and dies. Now, obviously we don't need to see this in detail because it's a Pixar film, but I think having Miguel die this way not only explains how he gets to the afterlife, but it demonstrates that both his choices and those of his family have direct consequences. The rest of the film could play out similarly, with the key difference being that Miguel somehow has to make it back to his body before the death is permanent. I'd also add a scene of Miguel's living family grieving. This could show that the family was wrong to hurt him, and it would symbolize that killing his spirit literally killed his body. Of course, in the lowest point of the movie, Miguel could see this and tried to console them, only to see that he couldn't. This would give him further motivation to return to his family given the impact his death has on them. A seemingly minor change in world building drastically affects the plot and where it could go. There are also some things at the end that I feel need some explanation. So if Hector got his final death, it would be because Coco, the last person who knew him, is the only one who can pass on his memory properly. Okay, but why can't Miguel just pass on his memories of Hector? It's not like his experience in the afterlife was deleted. I'm willing to believe that Miguel's own memory wouldn't be able to save him, given he was in the land of the dead, but if he shares the same stories to the rest of the family as Coco would, wouldn't that be the same result? I mean, I feel like Miguel knows more about Hector than Coco does, given she was very little when he died. Also, it's not like you need someone close to the relative to stay in the land of the remembered. Frida and De La Cruz are still alive, and I doubt there's anyone alive who had a personal relationship with them. Again, this might seem nitpicky, but these questions kind of make or break the rules of the universe. Lastly, I think the world of the Book of Life is a lot more vibrant than the one in Coco. Okay, that first part where Miguel's on the bridge is pretty cool, not gonna lie. And the swirling city design is really neat. But for a lot of the movie, the afterlife sort of feels like a regular city. This is the land of the dead, you'd expect a lot of wacky things going on. But I think it plays it a bit safe in comparison to the Book of Life. Man, this place looks awesome. You got these towering pyramids, buildings floating in the sky, vertical pathways, this dope palace. You got this cool Aladdin-like scene where Manolo has to survive this maze. And the Land of the Forgotten also looks cool. It's a shivering comparison to the Land of the Remembered. The color work is great here. Again, not that the afterlife in Coco looks bad or anything, the animation is beautiful. But the world of the Book of Life is just more immersive than the one in Coco for me. I think it also helps that The Book of Life has a very different animation style, harking back to traditional Mexican folk art.
Remember me, though I have to say goodbye.
I want to be clear, Coco is not a terrible movie. I know I've been pretty harsh on it this video, but there are lots of positive things to say about the movie. Of course, the animation is stellar, the songs are great, and there are some really good character moments throughout the film. I just think The Book of Life is a better representation of the story both set out to portray. I'm definitely curious on your thoughts on all this. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my hot takes here. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.